It is lovely to be able to see everybody online today. I have missed you guys for the last 2 weeks. I don't know, it's just my loss, but it is wonderful to be back here. Although looking at Icky right now, I'm not quite sure if everybody who's just listening to this, you have to just kind of imagine this. Icky is just like his head is there, and everything else is just kind of like in darkness. It's just missing a little bit, but it's a beautiful smile, so warm and generous, and so it feels safe. Are you safe, Icky? You can just you just blink a couple of
blink
times
for us.
Yes, I am.
I feel like that maybe some more Morse code is going on.
Should we send some lights, batteries, some flashlights?
They don't have a lot of power. So, Icky, great to see you, man. I'm glad you're on.
Good to see you guys.
With us. And I understand from Sam that you both are suffering from a loss of heat, and it's just really cold there. Is that right?
Yeah, we're in the dangerous mid-50s right now.
You guys are pretty sad.
Yeah.
I just want you to know that.
It feels really cold to us, Kyle.
Hey.
It's what you would experience at 0 degrees.
Exactly.
It's 46 in Michigan right now, and I'm ready to go outside in shorts, and I'm not kidding. It's amazing. The sun, I know what the sun is now. It's shown itself.
It is the problem, you know, Joe. Is the sun risen right now for you?
No,
right now?
no,
it's still
it's dark.
You actually
It's
are
dark.
in Nicky's place then.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nicky likes to just hang out in
Australia,
scary, dark places.
Crack the morning for her, but I'm glad to have all of you here. I'm glad to have Kyle as well with us, even though he's very excited about the sunshine. It's just it's amazing how you can make people in Michigan happy.
It literally takes
like very
an
low.
ounce of vitamin D.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
My body feels the vitamin D, and I'm alive. It's beautiful.
Well, we are in the Gospel of John. We are ReDEFINE, part of the One Project here. And as we explore the Gospel of John, it's really exciting to be able to have the privilege to look at it with fresh eyes and to ask the Spirit of God to give us insights here. All the experiences that we have combined together to pull it together is just going to be a fun passage. And we're still in chapter 1, which I think is going to take us about a year to get through. But we're in verses 19 to 28 right now. I'm going to ask Joe if you'd be kind enough to pray for us, pray for a blessing on what we're doing. And then Kyle, would you read those verses for us and we will dive in? Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jay. Hey, God, I just want to thank you so much for the morning or the evening, just this time that we get to be together, that we get to look at your word. I pray that you would direct us, help us to think about where we are, who we are, how we live in the world, how we can represent you best, and how this text illuminates that for us. Thanks for all of these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I know Icky's going to be really surprised that I know how to read. I've been practicing. I was just going to say that because I knew he'd say something after I read, but we're in John 1:19.
It's good that John the Baptist is so humble. Right, let's go.
We're in John 1:19, and I'm going to read to 28, and it goes, "And this is the testimony of John. When the Jews sent priests and Levites from Jerusalem to ask him, 'Who are you?' he confessed and did not deny, but confessed, 'I am not the Christ.' And they asked him, 'What then? Are you Elijah?' He said, 'I am not.' 'Are you the prophet?' And he answered, 'No.' So they said to him, 'Who are you? We need to give an answer to those who sent us. What do you say about yourself?' And he said, 'I am the voice of the one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord, as the prophet Isaiah said.' Now they had been sent from the Pharisees. They asked him, 'Then why are you baptizing? If you are neither the Christ, nor Elijah, nor the prophet.' John answered them, 'I baptize with water, but among you stands one you do not know, even he who comes after me, the strap of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie.' These things took place in Bethany across the Jordan where John was baptizing."
Ooh. So this is beautiful because we are starting to move from John's, statement of what this gospel's about to now the narrative that he wants to kind of like unpack. He even gives us a location, so it must be significant because everything that John writes, right, is important. So before we dive into too far into this, first impressions, anything that just leaps out to you that you're just like, oh, I hope we talk about this, or I just forgot that was inside there. Like I remembered a song, Make Straight the Way of the Lord. There's that song that people use from that, and so that just hit me again inside there. But what stands out to you straight away?
I notice how he does not claim to be a prophet, and the quote he shares is from a prophet. I thought that was pretty interesting.
That's true. That's true.
I think it's weird the way they word, the way he words verse 20. He confessed and did not deny, but confessed, I am not the Christ. Like, it's not just he's denying it, he's like making this confession. And that's just really interesting to me that it's not in terms of like, oh, I'm not that guy, because people will mistake you for different people in life. But he's like, all right, this is something really heavy that I'm about to share with them that's going to have implications.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially considering there were quite a few Christuses during that time. And anybody who started stirring up a movement got a big following. So I wonder if it was a temptation for some to say, hey, yeah, I am the Christ. And by him making an intentional statement of saying, no, I'm not, is saying something more than maybe we are used to seeing in this text, right?
Like that. Joe, Sam, what did you guys think?
I just really like the question, who are you? And I just think that's a good question for us to ask ourselves really often. Who am I? Who do I say that I am? Am I being that person? I've got that one. I always like to choose one little standout phrase in a passage, and that's the one I've got highlighted. Who are you?
Yeah. It is really good.
I've always loved the fact that John quotes Isaiah. To me, that is the heart of John's ministry, the heart of what should be our ministry, clearing the way, making the path straight for those who are coming to God, coming to Jesus. That's it. I mean, that is the central theme of John's life. And every time I read this, it reminds me, this is my task in this world, is to make straight the path.
Well, and Sam, maybe that's why he's clear about confessing from the very beginning who he's not. Like there could be a temptation like, oh, I'm the guy. Like people are following me. There's things going on. And he just straight away is like, no, like, just so you know, I'm not him. And like, I'm just not. So let's move from there. And maybe that's a good place for all of us to start in ministry. Like, realizing that
I am not the Messiah. I
It
am not the one who's going to preach.
You've been working
I fight it every day, Kyle, every day. But true. Well, I mean, so true. And the idea of or the topic of identity, I think, is what we're dancing around. I think that's what we're really going to land on here as we talk about this.
I've also I don't know how you feel about identity, and I think it comes back to Joe's point about who are you, but sometimes the identity question and the identity topic is really fantastic and engaging and brilliant, and other times I'm just like so over it, and I just want to kind of like move on to something else. And the problem is because I think that it's the way that identity is being used or bantered around or held around there. But I'm curious. Look, when I read this passage again and listened to you, Kyle, reading it, which is always fun to listen to someone else read it, because they put the emphasis in the wrong place. No, they put the emphasis in different places.
I feel that way every time you speak, Japhet. Rubbish.
It's fun to be able to see, what you pull in, where you pause, what the intonation, the character that you gave to how John responded to no or no or no. That was just more like for Joe. And so I think it's interesting that he starts off here with a testimony, and he says there is a group who are coming to ask, And I think we all have people in our lives who come and ask us questions, right? About who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who gave you authority to do that, or who gave you the right to do that, or should you step aside? And it's a really easy question to put your back up on, right? And yet I don't sense John the Baptist is has got his back up. I don't sense that he's like agitated by the question. He's kind of like he's just taking it. Like I kind of think he's like, wrong question, but fine. It's good. Whereas I've had situations in my life where my back's been put up, and I actually come from a very confidential background. Is that the best way to describe it? Basically, I was brought up to kind of like keep everything kind of private. And so it's really interesting, right? So then when I met Becky, 27 years ago and 28 years ago, and I met her parents, and I remember the very first time we went out to some kind of party that was like all of her dad's friends. Her parents' friends. They were asking me, "So who are you?" And I was like, "Why do you want to know?"
Who are you?
It was pretty offensive. It was pretty offensive, my response to them. I don't see him being offensive, which I think is really important that we know this about John the Baptist. So why did John choose John the Baptist at the beginning here? What's your take on that?
I've got a few different things sort of going on in my head, Japhet, just to respond to what you were saying there. But I do want to come back to that question about why John the Baptist. I was just thinking back to a time when I first went and did some sessional lecturing in art, and I was quite young and I was new to the department. I'd never lectured there before. And I started off, it's a bit of a cringe thing, but I started off my first lecture like explaining who I was and, why I would get to be an art lecturer, essentially. And I cringe at that now. Why did I have to prove that I, deserved that seat there? But we often do that. And I think as Adventists, we've talked a lot about Adventist identity and whether or not this is Adventist or that is Adventist, and proving it and drawing lines around it. One of the things that, I don't know if it's the same for where you are all at, but one of the things that has been talked a lot about over the years here is whether you're like a real Adventist or a cultural Adventist. Like, are you the one that like on paper believes all the things, or are you the one that just likes to hang out with the Adventists and eat haystacks and go to church on Sabbath? Because that's not a real Adventist.
Although that is really good.
Well, you know what? I actually think like I want to be the cultural Adventist. Like, to me, that's the real identity, the tribe that comes together, that seeks Jesus, that gathers on Sabbath and enjoys haystacks together, and that rest we discuss. Why do we need to have an identity where the borders are there, the lines are there, this is Adventist, this is not, this is the type of Adventist? And those identity discussions get very, very confusing, because then the identity is all of these other things and not just in Jesus. And isn't Adventism really culture? Anyway, that's a whole other discussion, but I think Adventist identity is an interesting thing to talk about. And I actually love the idea of cultural Adventism in terms of how we practice and gather together as possibly even more important than things on paper that are really just the things we discuss. Just a thought.
It would be fantastic, Joe, if and I love where you're going with this. It would be fantastic if we were those kind of people like John the Baptist, that if somebody came and said to us, what's your, Icky, every time we get online, what's the name of your thing? So one house SoCal.
One house SoCal, yeah.
One house SoCal. If we got online, right, and we were like, hey, I'm not one house SoCal. Right. I'm actually just a follower of Jesus. And we were like so comfortable that we didn't feel the need to actually, no, I am one house SoCal. I am, this. And I think that's where the identity, there's so many identities that we have, right? Whether we are mother or father or husband or wife or girlfriend, boyfriend, whether we are, whether we're teacher, lecturer, and whether we are Adventist, or what did you say, Joe? You said there's two types. It was cultural, or what was the other one?
I don't know. I didn't really have an
Okay,
name for
it was good. It was
real
good.
Adventist, like
Punk
paper
Adventist.
Adventist on paper. Like what do I look like? I don't know.
Cultural
I don't have a name
Adventists
for
and
it.
punk Adventists.
But I think that's actually, it plays into who we are, and it needs to. And if we don't stop, like you said at the beginning, Joe, if we don't stop and ask the question, who are we? I think it's so easy to just continue a path inside there. So John the Baptist must have known, like, from a very early stage, this is who I am, and it must have been settled for him. And it's not about him.
Well, and I think that's an amazing point, Jay. And I think it's amazing because for many of us, we're not settled on who we are. And I started laughing when you brought up the One House SoCal thing, because most of my classes at seminary are on Zoom. And so all my classmates are on Zoom. And there's a very few, like maybe 1% of seminary students that their name will say pastor before their name. And almost every time, and I'm not trying to throw shade, but they're the students who actually have not pastored. I am. But here's where it's funny. Like, I've kind of always looked at that and been like, you guys are silly. You've never been a pastor. You're just a student. But like, you create these hierarchies of identity. And then last week I got on and I had recently preached for something, and I noticed about an hour and a half into my lecture that my name was saying Pastor Kyle Smith. And it instantly made me stop and be like, you're a jerk. You've been judging people, but also this topic of identity, it is super important. And at least for me, it really mattered that when I was speaking at this youth event online, that they knew I was a pastor. But then in the classroom, we have these different facets of our identity. And I think where we get hung up as Adventists a lot of the time is we don't know how to like incorporate it into our whole life sometimes. Do you guys resonate with that? And I think even more so in Christianity, more and more people are saying, how does this actually work in my day-to-day life?
When I'm working in schools and particularly looking at policy stuff, we talk about getting from policy to the playground, and how do we get it from the paper all the way through so it becomes part of our practices, part of our places, but all the way so that it's the culture in the playground as well. And how do we do that? How do we actually develop that culture? And I guess that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about being cultural Adventists and going, well, who we are on paper, that's one thing. And to be honest, there's some things on paper that by paper would just plain old disagree with. But who are we on paper versus who are we in the world? And in our homes as well. How do we get from policy to playground? I think that's what you were talking about. Cool.
It's great how comfortable John seems to be in his skin, right? To know that, to know who he isn't. And I think that sense of security is imperative for him to be able to really fulfill his mission. And that's what in our church sometimes recognizing who we are or what we are and what we are not, who we are not, gets muddled so that we begin to think, well, we're remnant. We are the truth. We've got the truth. We are the bride. And we tell ourselves these things over and over until we feel pretty good about who we are. And so then it creates an identity crisis for us, because not that we do it on purpose, but we don't allow God to be God because we're busy trying to fulfill his shoes. It's like last week, Joe, I lectured last week. I did a lecture, but it was just to my children because that's who I lecture to. It's the only people who listen to me. So I was sitting at the table and my daughter pulls out the last yogurt and she's like going at it, and my son says, "There's no more, Dad." And I said, "Honey, can you share with Leo?" And she's like, "No." She's like, "Dad, if I share with Leo right now, he's going to have more than me. He already had 2 and I only had 1. So if I even give him a little bit, he's going to have more than me, Dad." And I said, "Whose yogurt is that?" She's like, "I don't know. It's in the fridge." I said, "Who bought it?" "You did." "Okay, so if I bought it, whose yogurt is it?" "Oh, it's your yogurt." I said, and you're eating it. But what do you think Dad wants you to do? Well, you want me to share, Dad. Yeah, that's true. I said, but if you share, guess what? I'm also the one who's going to buy more for you, right? Like she had this, she was bewildered by the fact that there was a sense of equality there that wasn't being recognized or respected. And she thought it was her place to figure that out, as opposed to allowing the person who actually buys, purchases, and refills to be the one to make that call for her.
So someday, Icky, your daughter's going to turn around and she's going to say, Dad, who bought this and who brought it here?
Yeah.
And you're going to say, you did. And the tables are going to turn entirely.
So fast.
And when that happens, I think that's when the identity settles in of the soul of who we are, and they sit at the table with a different perspective. And I think it's interesting that we I don't know if you've had this experience as well, where you turn up to a meeting or you turn up to an event and you're totally dressed inappropriately for that. You misread the cues, you didn't get it. You're like, oh, formal meant really like black, bow tie, and you're wearing a t-shirt. And so it's just those moments. How do you kind of hold yourself? I mean, Sam knows this really well because we've talked about this, where Alex and I went to do a meeting once with somebody and with a group of people, and it was this this is how the meeting began, where the person said, Japhet, I just want to let you know that I'm a very busy person, and so you're lucky that you've got my time right now, but I'm just a very busy person. I thought, identity issues, crisis here for this person.
Right.
That you've had to tell me that you're busy and that I'm so privileged to be in your presence right now. And I think that there is a settling that John the Baptist has, that he knows who he is, no matter whether the local authority that's like way there, right, comes and says, who are you? And he's not put off. He's kind of like, I have this identity in Jesus that's just, it's a different space. I envy that, because I don't always have that. I envy that. I envy his settledness and yet, we have this kind of image of him being kind of crazy barbarian, but actually there's something beautiful about it. Sorry, Sam.
No, listen, I was going to say it's because that is the way he's described out in the wilderness, a barbarian wearing camel clothes and munching on crickets and eating honey. So about that, by the way, Iki, I was going to say that with this lecturing business, I had this moment when Ali introduced me, my daughter Ali introduced me to the audience, her graduating weekend audience. I was speaking for her baccalaureate, and she said, this is my dad. He loves lecturing us at dinner. And she's never said this before. I thought these were just beautiful conversations where I dropped incredible pearls of wisdom and shaped my kids. But in that moment, she called it lecturing. And it hurt. It hurt. Anyway, but here's what I was going to say. Look, so brief story, okay, related to John the Baptist's identity and how he's painted as this wilderness guy living out there in the middle of nowhere. Our church, the church I used to attend here, which is down the street from me, bought a beautiful truck to do some of the community work that they do, to move food around or goods around. It's a box truck. You know what that is? A big box truck? Okay. Yeah. And they had someone decorated with a huge logo of the church on the side in a group picture, a beautiful group picture of church members, 5 or 6 of them, young and old, looking happy, like, we are La Sierra University Church. Gorgeous on both sides, massive. One night, someone tagged it. And for people who don't know what tagging is, earlier Kyle said throwing shade. I'm pretty sure people on this, some people may not know what that means.
Throwing shade category is tagging.
Right. So someone graffitied the truck, which happens a lot in my neighborhood. Usually the things they say are not good.
Can you expound and spell them? Or My mind
let's
is
just say
pure. I don't know what.
unrepeatables. Unrepeatables. Usually marking gang territory or boundaries or whatever. But so here's what they painted on the side of this truck, right? Humongous letters. Vegans. And then an arrow pointing at the people.
It was probably an academy kid. Let's be honest. He did it.
Oh, those cheese
Either way,
levels.
so here's the thing. So I've every time I drive, because they haven't repaired the damage. It's been there for months, and they just left it on there. I just keep thinking, this is our identity. This is our outward facing. This is our witness to this community. And listen, there's nothing wrong with that. I agree with Joe. We are, like, a lot of us are vegan. Great. John the Baptist, crickets and honey. But is that what they're going to remember ultimately? If they're going to write a story about us, are they going to say vegans only? Or are they going to say these people, their identity was they were the most engaged, most loving. They cared about our community. They were generous. They were forgiving. They lived it. They lived the way of Jesus among us. That was their identity. So I think this is what's important about John the Baptist, is that all the other things may be true, but we will never, ever, ever forget that his message was he must increase, we must decrease. That was at the heart of his identity.
Wow.
And I think that it speaks volumes to the tension that we have with our own identity when we are about our local community so much so that we have to claim that in a major way, or we are a particular taste or flavor of Adventism or Christianity, as Joe, as you alluded to at the beginning, that it supersedes what John was trying to do here. Because it's interesting, John doesn't go and say, I am the son of, my parents are, I'm the cousin of,
And he could have, because we do know from the other gospel, like, you asked the question earlier, Japhet, like, why does John the Baptist get included here? Well, his parents, like, there was a whole big deal. Like, he was actually chosen. He was actually, like,
part
designated
of the priestly
as
order.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This kid's going to be born. It's really important. There's already been stuff that's gone on that has pointed to that he's going to be a special person. So but he doesn't seem to care about that.
And that almost shows his heart, though. Like, he could have been like, I'm the guy, right? Like, I was prophet. None of us have been.
Zechariah. Yeah.
Yeah, like Sam Leonor may be the best speaker on the earth, but he was not prophesied from, no one touched his mother's womb and said, this is the one.
So, but
are you sure?
maybe actually.
On the flip side, we're saying, all of these people saying, who are you? And like, it didn't matter because he was this humble guy and he was just declaring Jesus. On the flip side, when someone in my community starts speaking up, I do want to ask, hang on, who are you? And no, I do want to know. I want to watch for a while and see some consistency, and I want to see some fruit. I'm not just going to go, it says that he's from God. She says, that, I am going to watch and I am going to ask those questions. I think those are really good questions for us to ask and to look out for.
Joe,
just putting that one out there too.
I had that very thought as I was reading this. I said, totally appropriate. If these people are the shepherds of their flock, they should have done some investigating. They should have gone out there and said, "Hey, who are you exactly with this baptismal thing you're doing?" And I think that was appropriate. However, because we know later, because we know the rest of the story, we know their motivation was probably not pure. But I think there's legitimate concern on their part. Crazy guy out there in Bethany. Saying and doing crazy things. Let's go check it out.
And an interesting question when they say, why are you baptizing if you're neither Christ nor Elijah nor the prophet? None of those guys baptized anyway. Christ didn't do any baptizing. Elijah didn't do. So this whole thing that John is doing is really bizarre.
The misconceptions they had made about what the Christ would be.
Yes, and he is building something, and this is the fear I think we have with any new voices, or any new ideas, is that it's the coalescing and the curating and the bringing together of something that worries some. And so then, like you said, Joe, I feel the same way. I want to question, find out what is your intent and what is your purpose in particular spheres. In some ways, then maybe, we said that he was very humble and very, very kind, but in some ways maybe he was just elusive. Maybe he was just, he was like, nah, I'm not going to answer. I'm not going to tell you. I don't know. I don't want to tell you. Or, maybe he was like, he is building this entire movement, and he's just like, but then he's like, I don't want to tell you this. So there is the flip side of it. If you read it as an innocent passage, just without any context and not knowing who these leaders really are, what was their game, why were they really asking, and what are they threatened about, and or were they truly asking because they're just curious to know? And they're excited to know, and like, hey, you're doing something great. Tell us about who you are. Or, excuse me, who are you? There's a difference between those two questions that go on.
But
sorry, Kyle, go, and then our time's up.
Well, I think verse 22 gives us an answer to that, right? They say we need to give an answer to those who sent us. And what I think that tells me is that were their hearts really seeking and searching? And we go back in scripture, like, seek and ye shall find. But you have to be seeking with your heart in like, what's the motive of your seeking and searching? And for them, just the way the questions they were asking, the way they were asking it in my head when I read it, which Japhet has already said is the wrong way. I think that the funny thing is, though, is that were their hearts did they really want to know John and know what he was about? Or were they just checking a box, doing their job, whatever? And I think, since we're wrapping up, for me at least, it makes me ask myself that same question about Jesus. Am I checking a box, or am I really wanting to know who he is?
Well, our time is up, so this is what we're going to do. We're not going to go forward on this passage. I think we're going to come back to it next week for sure. We do need to recircle just a little bit about why John the Baptist. We need to really unpack what, Joe, you asked us, about who are we, and what is it that would be ideal, and what is it that John, the gospel author, is really trying to say should be our response when people ask us who we are. Is it that I am Adventist? Is it something else? What does it mean, and how should we do that and do it comfortably? And I think we should go back to Matthew 11 and kind of see how Jesus portrays John the Baptist as well, and we'll see where we go with this passage next week. Lovely to be able to connect with everybody online, and great to always receive all your messages, your emails, your texts, and your comments as well. And thanks for subscribing as well to the podcast on, I think, about 9,000 different platforms, but I'm glad you're able to do that. We look forward to connecting with you next week, and God bless. Look after you.